Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. We are pleased to have the Christian History Institute sponsor this episode of the podcast. Find free resources and subscribe to their magazine at christianhistoryinstitute.org. Our first historical highlight of the week and the subject of our deep dive is John Camm. Camm was a farmer who was part of the Puritan movement. In the early 1650s, Camm encountered George Fox, the founder of the Religious Society of Friends, also known as the Quakers. Camm soon became one of the first generation of Quaker preachers, joining a group known as the Valiant 60, a group of traveling evangelists who spread the Quaker message across England. Camm was instrumental in shaping key Quaker beliefs, particularly regarding spiritual equality, rejection of violence, and nonconformity to state-imposed religious structures. His radical ideas and rejection of the established Church of England led to conflict with local authorities. Like many early Quaker preachers, Camm was arrested multiple times. After years of harsh persecution, John Camm died on March 18, 1657, possibly due to the hardships he endured from imprisonment and his relentless travels as a preacher. Our next historical highlight is Charles Wesley, one of the most impactful Christian hymn writers. Some of his more famous works include Hark the Herald Angels Sing, O for 1,000 Tongues to Sing, Love Divine All Loves Excelling, Jesus Lover of My Soul, and Christ the Lord is Risen Today. Wesley died on March 21, 1778. Our final historical highlight is Emperor Constantine. In our February 24th episode of the podcast, we discussed Roman Emperor Diocletian's edict against the Christians. After the edict was issued in 303 AD, it seemed as though persecution against Christians would never end. However, when Constantine became emperor in 306 AD, he encouraged Christianity and made it the official religion of Rome. Before he died on March 22, 337 AD, he escalated the Roman Empire to the head of the church, and it was many years later when the government finally stopped interfering with church decisions. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Steve Angell of the Earlham School of Religion about John Camm.
Welcome to our deep dive today as we learn more about John Camm, who was one of the movers and shakers and prime founders of the Quaker movement in England, and we are using this anniversary of his death that happened on March 18th, 1657 as part of our conversation today, and we are glad to have Professor Steve Angell join us, who is professor of Quaker Studies at Earlham School of Religion in Richmond, Indiana. So, Professor, thanks for joining us today.
Really glad to be with you this day.
Well, tell us a little bit about what was going on in the Quaker movement at this particular time frame. George Fox is certainly a name that might be familiar to anyone who is kind of doing at least a cursory review of trying to understand about Quakerism. But why John Camm? What was important that he did to the movement, and give us any background of any of that would be relevant.
Well, George Fox is certainly reckoned as the founder of Quakers. He was in 1652, 28 years old. He had been on the road since 1643, so about 9 years. Fox and eventually Camm were very concerned about the lack of what they saw as a genuine ministry in the Church of England. They were very worried about the bookish sermons. They were worried about the clergy um, and their you know uh, their very lavish lifestyles and social climbing. But they were most worried about the fact that the Church of England didn't do anything to really, in their mind, encourage um, uh, virtue and discourage vice among people.
Hmm.
Um, in the north of England, where Camm lived, there was an extensive movement of people called the Seekers, who thought that the church had become completely apostate
Mm.
and withdrew from everything, looking, the sacraments, everything appertaining to the church ritual, and they just met together, but they met in silence.
Ah,
Um,
because that have been illegal, right? Wouldn't it have been illegal for them to do that, but only as
um,
a church it would have been illegal, or preaching would have been illegal?
that
So
that's
when you
that's a
offer,
that's a good question, and when you look at the broader context of the time in 1640s and 1650s, you realize that there's a civil war going on in
right,
England.
right.
Between different kinds of Anglicans and the Puritans, or the godly as they thought of themselves,
Hmm.
had the upper hand. Uh, King Charles, that time King Charles II, we now have
Right.
King Charles III, but King Charles II uh, didn't want to keep any of the agreements that he made with Parliament. So eventually, the lead general among the Puritan parliamentary forces, Oliver Cromwell, chopped off Charles's head, 1649. So about 3 years before the events we're talking about. But suffice it to say that England was in chaos, and any laws against the religion that was not approved by the state um, were only being enforced sporadically.
Mm.
Um, in the north of England in 1652, um, to the surprise of, I think, people throughout the nation, thousands of these seekers and other radical Christians um, adopted a religion very similar to that being advocated by George Fox, namely that Christ has already returned, and Christ has returned not outwardly but in our hearts. Um, and so, he urged everybody to turn to the inward teacher and to attend to the pure light of God in their consciences. Um, and so, most of what um, was thought of as Christianity, which was not um, not denied outright by Quakers, but was turned in, was spiritualized. So instead of having sacraments, baptism by water, and bread and wine for the Lord's Supper, those were things to be experienced inwardly.
Mm.
So the main sacrament for Quakers was their form of worship, which built on this worship from the Seekers. So, like the Seekers, the Quakers met in silence, but they were also, you know, with their confidence that Christ has returned and Christ is in each of our hearts. Christ may actually leave a message for each of us to share, for any of us to share with the rest of the group. So out of the silence, God, Christ could lead somebody to share often a short message. Fox's messages were often a little longer. He had a lot to say. John Camm too. But after the message is over, then the group returns to the silence. And the worship in those days, nowadays among Quakers, the Quakers that practice this form of worship, the worship lasts about an hour, but in those days it lasted 3 hours.
Wow.
So it was pretty extensive. So Fox came through the north of England in 1652. He stopped at a place called Swarthmore Hall near Lancaster. And one of his most notable converts there was a woman by the name of Margaret Fell, who was a wife of a judge with 8 children, and a very capable theologian and organizer in her own right. Fox came to depend on her a great deal. The judge himself never converted to Quakerism, but he protected Quakers in the area. So that was pretty crucial because in many parts of England, the authorities came down very strongly on Quakers, but not in this northwest part. So Fell protected them. Judge Fell protected them. Judge Fell died in 1658, and 11 years later, Margaret Fell married George Fox.
Okay.
But from Swarthmore Hall, where the Fells lived, Fox continued south to a place called the county is called Westmoreland, and this was where almost 3% of the population became Quakers. So it was a huge number of converts. One of the places in Westmoreland is a town, rural area really, called Preston Patrick. I was just there this summer. You can still see the sheep grazing on the hills. There is still a Quaker meeting, one that in roughly the place that John Camm would have attended, but it was built in 1869, so it was not the exact same building. But if you go to Preston Patrick, you get the idea of the countryside, which would still look familiar to John Camm if he were here today.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Steve Angell on the Center for Christian History website at centerforchristianhistory.com. We are pleased to have the Christian History Institute sponsor this episode of the podcast. Find free resources and subscribe to their magazine at christianhistoryinstitute.org. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College, in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube Music, or wherever fine podcasts are found. Our next episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.